Truth.
In the heart of West Africa, a bold claim is making waves. A sovereign canal built without foreign aid. Footage of heavy machinery and cheering crowds is spreading fast. Some call it a revolution in infrastructure. But dig a little deeper and cracks start to show. No major international outlet has verified the project. No blueprints, no budget disclosures, no independent reports. So what's really being built here? A canal or a narrative. In a time when global alliances are shifting and post-colonial powers are being challenged, perhaps the canal matters less than the story surrounding it. Observers can't seem to agree. What do you think? In a country where information travels faster than confirmation, visibility can replace verification. Over the past few weeks, videos claiming to show construction of a large-scale canal in Burkina Faso have circulated widely across social media platforms. In one clip, a lone excavator scrapes at the earth under the afternoon sun. In another, local residents cheer as a convoy of trucks passes by on a dusty road. The message, repeated across uploads: the canal is real, and it's being built entirely without foreign assistance. Some of these videos have accumulated tens of thousands of views, amplified by commentary accounts framing the project as a symbol of self-determination. Terms like sovereignty, independence, and decolonization appear frequently in captions and comments. But despite the volume of visual content, few verifiable facts have emerged. No official government statement has been issued to confirm the project's existence, scope, timeline, or budget. The Ministry of Infrastructure has remained silent. International news agencies, including AFP, Reuters, and Al Jazeera, have not reported on any ongoing excavation activity. Local journalists attempting to follow up on the claims have encountered obstacles. One community radio segment that mentioned the canal aired briefly in Bobo Dioulasso, then disappeared from the station's digital archives within 24 hours. The broadcaster declined to comment on the removal. In the absence of formal documentation, public perception continues to shape the narrative. For some, the videos are evidence of national progress. For others, they are an exercise in optics. But behind what's shown, one regional reporter remarked, lies what isn't said. And what hasn't been said officially, publicly, or clearly remains the most consistent element of the story so far. For a project of this scale, the absence of plans may say more than any announcement ever could. Despite weeks of speculation, no engineering blueprints or technical plans for the so-called Traoré Canal have been released to the public. There is no visible survey map, no environmental assessment, no published route trajectory. Attempts to trace procurement or contractor information have yielded nothing. The Ministry of Economy has not listed any large-scale infrastructure spending in recent quarterly disclosures. If funding exists, it is off the books or off the record. Requests for comment sent to government agencies have gone unanswered. A mid-level civil servant, speaking anonymously due to professional risk, told a local outlet that what exists so far is preliminary terrain analysis, and that no physical construction has officially been authorized. Meanwhile, local newspapers report that heavy equipment seen in viral clips may belong to municipal contracts unrelated to canal excavation. In one case, a bulldozer identified in a shared video was traced to a gravel clearing operation nearly 60 kilometers from the claimed canal zone. The lack of centralized information has opened the door to unofficial claims. Supporters describe the silence as strategic, an intentional departure from transparency models shaped by foreign oversight. Critics see it as a red flag. If the project is real, why is there no traceable paper trail? If it's not, what exactly are citizens being shown and why? The distinction between construction and choreography remains unclear. Sometimes, what a project represents travels faster than what it physically becomes. As physical evidence of construction remains limited, the canal has begun to evolve not as infrastructure, but as symbol. Across Burkina media channels, the canal is now portrayed as a national turning point, a move toward economic sovereignty, defiance of former colonial frameworks, and a test of regional self-reliance. Its image circulates freely in live streams, slogans, even school murals. In some towns, local leaders have preemptively declared zones of autonomy, citing the anticipated arrival of canal water. In one village south of Dédougou, residents erected hand-painted signs reading Territoire du Canal Burkinabé only, though no formal planning document lists the area as part of the route. The canal, as a physical object, remains undefined, but the canal as narrative infrastructure has already taken shape. Public trust or hope appears to fill the gaps where documentation does not. In communities that feel historically neglected by state investment, the promise of a sovereign waterway resonates more than the logistics behind it. Observers note that this shift is not unusual. National identity projects often gain traction through story first and form second. In this case, the story is accelerating. Even before the canal arrives, if it ever does, its psychological footprint is already altering the terrain. If something is truly being built, it should leave a trace, even from orbit. To date, no publicly available satellite imagery confirms active canal construction in the regions referenced by viral footage. Several coordinates associated with the canal's alleged path, including zones near Dédougou, Solenzo, and the Boucle du Mauhoun, show minimal ground disturbance over the past 12 months. Comparative satellite captures from mid-2024 to mid-2025 display no significant land alteration consistent with excavation or large-scale movement of Earth. Commercial satellite providers contacted for verification were unable to identify ongoing works matching the scale implied by social media narratives. Seasonal changes, vegetation shifts, and road patterns remain mostly static. One localized news outlet in the Sahel region reported the presence of machinery in an agricultural zone marked as part of the projected route. Within days, the article was removed from its online archive, citing concerns over editorial security. The outlet has not responded to follow-up inquiries. This pattern is not isolated. Other digital traces, including geotagged images, drone captures, and regional media reports, have either vanished or been discredited due to lack of metadata. What remains is a mosaic of claims unanchored by verifiable ground activity. The absence of visible development does not confirm that nothing is happening, but it does raise a persistent question. If this is a state-backed megaproject, where are its shadows? Until now, the satellite sees very little. Sometimes a canal is not about water, but about where influence flows. The narrative surrounding the canal cannot be fully understood without context beyond Burkina Faso's borders. Since 2023, the Sahel region has undergone rapid geopolitical reconfiguration. With military-led governments in Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger severing ties with France and turning away from traditional Western aid frameworks, a new regional bloc has quietly begun to form. Resource control, infrastructure independence, and strategic realignment now define much of the policy rhetoric. In this environment, the idea of a canal built without foreign oversight takes on symbolic weight. It is not just about water access. It becomes a metaphor for autonomy, a self-directed artery running through lands long subjected to external influence. Diplomatic analysts have noted that the canal's emergence coincides with broader attempts to restructure trade corridors and internal supply chains across the Sahel. Though no confirmed agreements link the three allied states to a joint infrastructure initiative, rhetoric from all three governments increasingly points toward cooperative economic sovereignty. International media have taken notice. A French-language editorial published earlier this year questioned the disappearance of European infrastructure funding in the Sahel, suggesting that local regimes may be pursuing off-grid development to escape conditions tied to aid. The editorial was quickly challenged by regional commentators, who framed the shift not as a disappearance, but as a disengagement, voluntary and strategic. Whether the canal exists physically or not, it functions rhetorically as part of this larger repositioning. In that sense, it may serve less as a construction site and more as a signal. A quiet attempt to redraw the regional map without asking for permission. Even without a canal, something has already moved. Weeks into the story, there is still no confirmed construction, no measurable impact on agriculture, and no official route disclosed. Yet the canal, or rather the idea of it, has already reshaped conversations far beyond its supposed location. In border villages once considered politically peripheral, murals now depict water flowing across dry fields. Local schoolteachers report students drawing maps with new rivers traced by hand, connecting isolated communities to imagined ports and trade routes. In interviews, some residents describe the canal not as a utility, but as a promise, tangible or not. International observers note a shift in posture. The language of sovereignty, once confined to political speeches, now surfaces in everyday dialogue, media commentary, and local ceremony. The project, whether built or not, has served to reframe how the state defines its trajectory, outward-facing, unmediated, unconfirmed. In Ouagadougou, a short film shown at a community event featured a fictionalized version of the canal completed. The final scene follows a child watching water reach her village for the first time. The script, shared by organizers, ends with a single line: "We dug because no one gave us permission." The canal may never function as infrastructure, but as an instrument of narrative, of agency, of refusal, it is already operational. What began as a construction claim now stands as a communication event. The canal, whether real, delayed, or never planned, has already fulfilled part of its purpose. It drew attention, it shifted tone. It challenged the usual flow of narrative between governments, citizens, and international observers. As with many modern infrastructure stories, the physical object may be secondary to the symbolic footprint it leaves behind. In this case, the question is not just whether concrete was poured, but whether perception was mobilized effectively, deliberately, and without outside endorsement. The facts remain incomplete. The evidence is thin. The public record is quiet, but the impact, soft, cultural, psychological, is present. This may not be a story about infrastructure in the traditional sense. It may be a story about who gets to build meaning and on whose terms. So what matters more, concrete or conviction? This story isn't finished, but whose version of it will last?